How'd you take these headlines?
I mean, I wouldn't read too much into it. I mean, if we look at last quarter, I mean, the death was greatly exaggerated of Apple going into March, and I think supply chain was dead wrong. Here, it's all about September, December guidance, this trifecta of iPhones coming out. So I would not really read too much into this as a knee-jerk reaction, as well as also the June quarter is sort of background noise to the broader story going out here. We continue to think $1 trillion market cap is hits in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
So when might we read the tea leaves into the potential iPhone demand, right? Everyone was waiting for the super cycle. That never happened. We get the product refresh in the fall. What tea leaves do we need to read to know if that's going to deliver?
I mean, it's really ultimately as we get into September, October, to see the 350 million iPhones that are in the window of an upgrade opportunity, how many come, to the door in terms of upgrades over the next, call it, 6 to 9 months. It's all about China. China's front and center, where we believe about 60 to 70 million iPhones are up for an upgrade opportunity. So as of now, if they're just, call it, 60 to 70% successful in some of those numbers, I think numbers go higher, and ultimately, that really drives the stock to over this $1 trillion market cap. I think at this point, valuation is still very reasonable here, and we think this is just the start of this next cycle, with software and services being a big component that we think hits $50 billion by 2020.
$50 billion, okay. And I know that you mentioned the $1 trillion mark, so we're waiting on like 203 is where we're going to surpass that level. So talking about services, how big of a business can services be so we stop paying attention to these headlines about component supply chains?
Look, Apple is going to be an iPhone story. I mean, there's no doubt about that for the foreseeable future. But software services, the reason it's so important, and ultimately, again, we think $50 billion of annual revenue over 2020, it's the margins, it's the growth opportunity there, and that's really that second leg of the growth stool. I think part of the valuation sort of uplift that we've seen is a re-rating because of that software services piece. And I think you're going to see Apple, you saw it at WWDC, I think they're going to become more focused on that, to really focus on putting more of a fence around that customer base on that software services side, which is going to be key. And ultimately, as Apple, you see more maturity on the smartphone side. I think this is going to kind of be part of the next strategy that we're going to see from Cupertino and Cook.